Hey everybody, welcome back to Eluda Racing. So in this video we're going to be continuing on with the upgrades on the Grand National, and in this one we're going to do the vacuum port, or the vacuum distribution block upgrade. And we kind of talked about that on the previous video on what that was for, and we're going to go ahead and do that video. So here's the new distribution block, and this is the extra port that I was talking about, and that's going to be the one for the brake booster. But I just wanted to, while I got everything kind of spread out on the bench, just wanted to show everything that you need to do this, and some things that you can get to enhance this this upgrade. Obviously you need the distribution block, but I went ahead and I ordered replacement hoses too, and I ordered these from Curbin Performance, and their part number is 7695, and that's from Curbin Performance. And the nice thing about this kit is they actually give you enough hose. They give you 10 sections of hose, and it's enough to do 2 vehicles, which I thought was pretty nice. And they are not cut to length. You're going to need to kind of lay these out when you do the replacement, and you'll want to cut those to fit. But so yeah, that would be something I would recommend when you're doing this. If you're going to replace this, rather than fighting with these old lines, you're going to want to replace those lines, because these lines, they get hard, and it's really hard to work with them. I went ahead and I cut these off with a razor, because if you try to take this off and pull, you can, even though these are steel right here, these vacuum lines are steel lines, they can become very brittle and they'll easily bend, or you can kink them at the bend. So it's a good idea when you're doing this upgrade, when you're going to the billet one, to replace these lines at the same time, and to speed up the process and to make the process easier, I would highly recommend slicing those lines, cutting those lines off, rather than fighting with them. So back over here, like I said, we're going to need the billet aluminum block, the vacuum block, the replacement lines, any type of utility knife, razor knife, whatever, to cut those lines. You're going to need 2 tools. The factory one is held on by a 5/16 bolt. The new one is, obviously, those are Allen's, and the Allen is a 5/32. So you're going to need the Allen wrench, socket Allen. I'm using a socket Allen, socket wrench, and that's really it. The new block comes with the gasket, so you're not going to need a gasket. You do not use Permatex or anything like that. This is a gasket that's meant to be installed dry. And those are all the parts that you need and tools that you need to do this. So let's go over to the car, and we'll start with, like I said, these lines. I went ahead, all these lines, I cut 1 slit right down the top to make these all loose, and these will come off real easy. I also cut this one right here. This is the main brake line. Because like I said, if you pull on this stuff will wiggle. So it's steel, but it's fragile. You can't just go yanking on this and manhandling it. You're going to bend it and you're going to break it. And I got news for you: they don't just sell these at AutoZone anymore. I would be more than willing to bet that that's a discontinued part, and you break it, you're screwed. So yeah, do yourself a favor, cut those lines on the top with a knife, like I said. Then you're going to need to get your socket wrench and your socket, and we're going to need to pull this off. The other reason I forgot to mention that it's a good idea to cut these lines is if you're not doing the billet block and you're just wanting to replace these lines, this block right here is actually plastic. So these lines are very, very hard. If you try to yank this off, you could end up snapping off one of these ports, one of these vacuum ports off this block. And this is another one of those things that this is no longer available. You know, you can find it on the secondhand market and stuff like that, but you're not gonna go to any of the local dealerships or anything like that and be able to find this. So the cutting makes it a lot easier. This is what the original one looks like. So it came off nice and easy. This gasket is available, so if you were taking this off to just do the lines, you can replace the gasket. You can also reuse this gasket as long as it doesn't tear, and most times when you're taking off this block, this gasket does not tear because the gasket will not usually stick to the plastic. It won't usually stick to this. It will usually stick to your throttle body. So that's something that you can do, is if you're in a pinch and you can't find one but you want to do this, if you're careful and you don't wreck this gasket, you could reuse it. Now I'm not going to reuse it because I have that other block and it came with a gasket. So for me, I don't really see the point of reusing a 34-year-old gasket or 33-year-old gasket, whatever the hell it is. But this is also a good time to kind of clean this up while you're doing this, because it's not usually easy to get at any of this when those lines are on there. So clean it up, wipe off any grease or oil, anything off these lines. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a razor and I'm going to scrape off this gasket. So that's what we're going to be doing next. As you can see, the gasket came right off. I would recommend, I like to use a flat blade razor over some type of scraper. And the reason I recommend using the razor over the scraper on smaller stuff like this is you're a lot less likely to gouge this aluminum. This aluminum, you know, it's a soft metal. It's not steel or anything like that. You're not scraping off like a head gasket or something like that off of a steel head. You know, so if you got a scraper and you're not careful, you can gouge this, and then you're not going to get a good seal on with the new gasket. So you want to be really, really careful. Clean that off, prep it for the new gasket. Here's the old gasket, came off with no issues. Alright, like I said, this is what I'm talking about. Just a straight razor is what I use. You can buy, you know, 100 of these at like Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, whatever, you know, for a couple bucks, and you know, they're good. So here's the new gasket. Now, like I said, this goes on dry. You do not want to use any Permatex or silicone or anything like that. So I'm looking at this, and this has got me a little bit concerned because that hole is now covered when I put this gasket on. So we need to verify and make sure that's not an issue. This is the old gasket. So with the old gasket, that hole was exposed. Okay, well, if anybody's watching this and you want to comment down below, this has got me scratching my head a little bit. Yeah, give me a second, I'll be right back. Alright, so I went ahead and I've got these sitting side by side, and basically the reason that the gasket has changed is because the design has changed. This has, even though all these vacuum ports are on one side, if you pull this gasket off, this is actually divided into 3 chambers. You have one chamber here for this one port. You have this center larger chamber, which is for 1, 2, 3 more ports. And then you have this third chamber up here, which is for this top one. Now if you look at the new one, all those chambers are all linked into one. There's your 1, 2, 3, 4. And then that one is your 5th one. And then this one is tied into that one. So by me blocking off that extra hole that would be exposed on this gasket, I'm not hurting anything. So I just wanted to verify that, because what I don't want to do is put this thing together and then have issues with it. So that was a little bit sketchy there for a second. I've never done this upgrade on the other Grand Nationals that I had. I never messed with the original braking system, so for me it was never touched. So yeah, that's going to go like that. And then basically what I want to do is I'm just going to I'm going to test fit this, and the reason I want to test fit this is because I want to cut those hoses down to proper length, because I don't want to have to pull this apart again. So what I want to do is just kind of loosely throw everything together, and then that way I can figure out the proper length for the hoses. They don't give you a lot of extra, but like I said, they do give you a little bit more than what you need. So if I was you, I would do the same thing. I like to use the old analogy, it's better to measure twice and cut once. So yeah, we just get everything finger tight. And then you can see there is a little bit of give to these. You know, they will move and stuff like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what I need as far as length. I'm going to pull this back off, because then I'm going to slide the hoses onto each of their appropriate tubes or vacuum tubes, and then I'm going to slide them onto the block, put the block together, and then bolt it down. I don't want to have to pull these apart and try to fish that hose in there. So if I was you, that's what I would recommend, because like I said, especially these front 3, these go way down. You'll snap these off or you'll kink these, and you're going to be pissed. So let's grab some lines and start mocking up the lengths, and we'll cut them. Alright, so I went ahead and I cut all the hoses to the proper length. I didn't think you guys would want to see me measure and cut some hoses, but I basically used the old hoses as reference, and then I also, with the new block down, I kind of just gauged the depth or the length of what the hose needs to be, and you know, take a measurement, cut them each individually, because what you don't want to do is just do a line and then cut them all, because things will, if you cut one hose and then you use that hose that you just cut to cut the next hose, things will have a habit of usually growing or shrinking, because each one is not quite perfect. So if you use the same piece of hose as a reference for all the hoses, more than likely it will become a little bit more uniform, and it will look a little bit better. So just a little friendly tip. But I also, as I was cutting them, I was putting them on the appropriate port, and not that you can mess them up. They're clearly different sizes and stuff like that. You know, 3 are one size, one's the large one, and then there's a real small one. So it's pretty self-explanatory. But I'm going to transfer them over one at a time, and then, like I said, once these hoses are on here, we're going to then bolt it back onto the throttle body, and then as we're setting it in place, we're going to slide them onto the other vac lines, the hard lines. I would give a little bit of a recommendation if you have some soapy water, something to help with the sliding on of these hoses. It'll make a little bit of a difference. I wouldn't use any type of oil or grease or dielectric grease or anything. You don't want something that's going to stay there, because it will give the ability of these hoses could potentially pop off, because these will become under pressure when you're under boost. So soapy water will dry, and then we'll leave a non-slippery surface there once it's done. So that's what I would use. I mean, not to sound gross, but you could even use a little bit of spit. So use whatever you got, but let's go ahead and transfer over these lines. Alright, so we got the lines transferred over. Let's go ahead and put this back on, and then we'll complete the installation. Now what I did, like I said, I would highly recommend getting some soapy water or something, because even I use spit, but even with that, it made it a little bit kind of difficult to get those on. Another thing you could do too is if you have a heat gun, you could heat these up a little bit, make them a little bit softer and spongier, and that will make them slide on easier. But you don't want to overheat them and have the hose break down, because then it could go from being soft and pliable to starting to break down and melt, where basically at that point you've wrecked that hose. So that's what I would do, is I would you know, figure out something, heat it up a little bit, combination of heat and a little bit of lube, whatever, and you know, they should go on without any issues. But like I said, you're going to want to hold and support this hard line while you're sliding these on, and then let this set down, and then do your bolts. Or if you're reusing your old block, same thing, you're going to want to make sure those are on there, and you're gentle, because you don't want to snap off on the old block. You don't want to snap off any of these plastic ports. So just be mindful of that, and be careful while you're doing everything, your assembly, so you don't cause any damage and any unnecessary aggravation. All right, well, thanks to a GoPro battery that died and a hose that I feel is the wrong size, that was a complete cluster F and a pain in the ass. One thing I am in life is brutally honest, and I would have to say that this hose kit from Carbon Performance, I don't care for it. The hose that goes here that they give you, it doesn't even come close to going on this factory one. It was probably, I tried heating it, you name it. It was so stretched out so much when it's on there, that there is no way that it was the right hose, because a hose, when it's slipped over the appropriate size pipe, should not be a third larger in diameter. And when I say that, this hose right here is 3/8 hose. This is nowhere near 3/8 ID hose. And I think that this hose, oh, well, it says right there, 9/32. There's no way that's 9/32. So Carbon Performance, if you guys are watching this, this is wrong. You should not be using 9/32 for this main vacuum port. This car is 100% original, so I don't want to hear that I have the wrong size vacuum ports, I have something wrong, because I don't. You guys are using the wrong diameter hose. 9/32 is not the appropriate size diameter hose to go on this main vacuum line right here. So guys, do yourself a favor, just buy the hose. You can buy it in bulk offline or whatever. Just buy it and make your own kit. Don't waste your money on it, because it's not worth the hassle and the headache that I just went through to get this to put back on. This should have been a 5-minute job, not a 15-minute pain in the ass. So anyway, we got that all back on. The port is the distribution block is tightened down. Now you're an aluminum block going into an aluminum throttle body, so when you're tightening these down, do not over torque them. I don't have any torque specs for you, unfortunately. I guess you could probably look up and see what the original torque specs were for the original block, and use those, but that's a plastic block and this is an aluminum block, so I don't know what those values are, but that would probably be a good starting point, is to see what their factory torque specs are and then go from there, you know, possibly a little bit tighter. So this is all done. Now the last thing we're going to be doing is, like I pointed out before, my brake line, vacuum line was going right here. We're going to cap this off, or the other thing I might do is this might be where I put my my sensor for my boost gauge. I don't know yet, because I have an unused port on the other side from when I take off all the EGR stuff. So I'm going to have a couple extra ports that I can pick and choose from. This one being on this side would be a longer run, so this I'll probably ultimately end up capping this off right here. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do then, is we're going to pull this line off, and I'm going to reuse this line because this is going to be a lot longer than what's needed to reroute that vacuum line for the brake booster. Now one thing that I'm not going to use, I couldn't really find a straight answer on this from in my looking up, but I think this is some type of like filter. I don't really see the point of it, but I'm not going to use it. I'm going to eliminate this, and I'm just going to be using the one-way check valve. And the reason you have that is because what that does is that allows vacuum to build up in the vacuum canister, but then when you're under boost, it closes and it prevents you from pressurizing this canister, because this canister needs to be under vacuum, not under pressure. So that is what that one-way check valve does, and it's important to make sure that this thing works. And really the only way to do it is you know, just blow through it or suck on it and see, you know, make sure it works. Now it is directional, and you can see right there is an arrow, and that arrow is going to go in the direction of that block. So that's important that you pay attention when you're doing this, that you hook this up properly, or else you're going to be in big trouble. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pull this hose off, and then we're going to kind of lay it out, and we're going to cut it to length. All right, so we got this on here. Little bit of fighting, I'm not gonna lie. This port right here is actually a little bit bigger than 3/8, so I kind of had to force it on there, but nonetheless I got it on there. You can see I have the check valve in place. I just wanted to kind of keep it over here, just to kind of keep it looking as clean as possible. I'm big on attention to detail and aesthetics and stuff like that, and even though this thing has a way to go, I want it to look as good as I can possibly make it look with what I'm working with. And I just think that the check valve being over here close to the vacuum canister looks better than having it out here in the middle or over there. You know, we want this to kind of be this focal point, the centerpiece of the motor, and I just want it to look as good as I can. So that's why I chose to put that there. And then remember, we have a direction arrow, so this has to flow. It has to have vacuum but not pressure. So make sure that arrow points away from your vacuum canister. That means that you can have suction but not pressure. So all right, yeah, that's pretty much where we're at on this video. I wanted to try to keep it short and to the point, and just keep the progress and the progression moving as much as I can, and the content coming out to you guys as much as I can with the time that I have. So yeah, this is the next thing that we've done, and we're gonna keep on moving right along. So if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, or you know the spiel, please like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. And I look forward to seeing you next time. So here's an after, and then we're going to show you a before. Let me know what you guys think. I think it looks a little bit better. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.